This is the main Russian battle tank, T-90, and it is now Ukrainian. In 30 months of war, Ukrainians have captured hundreds of Russian machines. But, as always, it's not that simple. What secrets does Russian gear hide, and how well does it work against its former owners? Let's start with this beast. These are the kinds of gifts they leave us. From the outside, it may seem that this is a tank-mounted rocket launcher. And you would be right. However, the firepower of this system is much greater than you can imagine. It is a T-91 Self-propelled, which the Russians call the most powerful non-nuclear weapon. If you scratch the surface of any Russian unmatched design, you'll find Soviet-era gear underneath. In general, the idea of creating such a thermobaric device appeared in the USSR back in the 70s. According to OSINT analysts, only 3 such units exist in the Ukrainian armed forces. Self-propelled uses thermobaric rockets, which create a powerful explosive effect with high temperatures. The explosion occurs by spraying fuel in the air, creating a fire cloud, and igniting an explosion that burns oxygen in the target area. In 2022, this development was obtained by the soldiers of the legendary commander Da Vinci. This young guy joined the front at 18 and became a true symbol of Ukraine's fight for freedom. Sadly, in March 2023, he lost his life and never saw his favorite hard-won trophy in use. The range of this terrible weapon is limited to about 3.5 miles, forcing it to get closer to the front lines, unlike longer-range MLRS systems. That's exactly why it becomes easy prey for Ukrainian FPV drones. And for a captured TOS-1A, that's just the beginning of its problems. Since Ukraine doesn't produce its own thermobaric rounds, the only ammo source for a captured Self-propelled is, once again, more captured supplies. A real jackpot if they can get them. Loading any other type of rocket into the system? Not an option. That's why you'll rarely see these machines in action. Among all the variety of trophy munition, this one comes across somewhat more often than the TOS-1A ammunition load. This is the 2K25 Krasnopol, a precision artillery shell, and one of the most effective Russian-made tools for pinpoint artillery strikes. The Obolon Artillery Command Vehicle Complex has proven its ability to fire captured Krasnopol precision rounds, giving our forces a serious boost. The best part? It can be launched from almost any 152mm artillery system. It uses a semi-active laser guidance system, meaning an operator needs to laser designate the target. As the shell approaches, it adjusts its trajectory to hit the illuminated spot precisely. Thanks to the Russians for the Lend-Lease. And here's where it gets tricky for Ukrainians using these shells. Unlike Western guided shells, where targeting is set on the shell itself, Krasnopol relies on a laser beam for guidance. The laser frequency on the shell has to match the illuminator station frequency. On one hand, this makes it more resistant to electronic warfare. On the other, it limits the range to about 12 miles. Most importantly, our artillery crews can detect when Russians are targeting with Krasnopol using laser sensors, and duck for cover just in time. Oh, and these shells are also fired from captured equipment. But before we get to the heavy weights, hit that like button for this video. But where Ukrainians really got lucky is with self-propelled artillery. I'm holding on tight this time. Last time I nearly fell off the vehicle. Fire! Technically, the Russians didn't get too creative here. If you take a T-72 tank and slap a big gun on it, you end up with this self-propelled artillery piece. The Russians' main self-propelled gun, the 2S-19 MSTS, has fit in quite well with Ukrainian artillery crews. Over 30 of these guns are now firing back at their former owners along the entire front line. Most of these units were picked up during the Kharkiv counteroffensive. They were literally found abandoned in the bushes after Russian crews made a hasty exit. But the further Ukrainian forces advanced, the worse the captured equipment got. Any breakdown that stopped the occupiers from moving forward led them to abandon their gear, often in unusable condition. Dozens of these vehicles ended up as parts donors or straight up scrap. Another downside? These machines are absolute gas guzzlers. The fuel appetite is huge. Specs claim 63 to 119 gallons for 60 miles. But in reality, it's even more. And here's that hottie we mentioned at the start, the T-90. It's the best tank in Russia's arsenal that actually sees combat, not just parades. The latest version, the T-90M ProRev Breakthrough, comes with upgraded armor, new electronics, thermal sights, and better crew protection. It's more effective in combat thanks to improved armor materials and a boosted engine, letting it hit up to 40 mm even over rough terrain. But all those upgrades didn't save it from the eyes of Ukrainian paratroopers. We dealt with the enemy and then spotted a chunk of metal between the trees. I thought, what could that be? Turns out it was a tank, engine off. Then I see someone climbing on it, a mechanic trying to start it up. He fiddled around, nothing happened. Then he climbed out of the hatch and headed back toward his buddies. It's been a great addition to the Ukrainian paratroopers vehicle collection as they advance into Russian territory. But the guys who captured it have a bit of a sarcastic take on their prize. The mechanics aren't too thrilled with this tank. They say anything made by Ukrainian hands is way better than this, whatever this is. But hey, we got on the same page with this tank. It's learned who Putin is, what Ukraine and a thriving West are all about. And it's like, all right, I'm with you guys. Now it'll be working against the scoundrels who made it for bad purposes. Despite its power and modern upgrades, the T-90M hasn't become the crown jewel of captured tanks. That honor goes to this marvel. This is a Russian T-62M made back in the 60s. No armor, no ammo, but it was apparently being used to transport personnel. Dubbed the tank shed by Ukrainian troops, it's a prime example of how Russians are trying to make up for armor losses with whatever they can find, and maybe stay a little protected from Ukrainian FPVs. It's almost protected from FPV drones, but guess what? FPVs stopped it anyway, first with drops, then finished it off with an FPV drone. Despite its intimidating post-apocalyptic look, it took minimal effort to immobilize this shed on wheels and capture its crew. This is their makeshift room. You've got sleeping bags, food supplies, water, and here's the unarmored turret. No dynamic armor, just the basic T-62M turret with the loader's hatch closed, where the commander was sitting. The only new thing on this whole 60s tank was a radio. New antenna, visible wires for the radio, and, of course, some electronic warfare gear. But the real joy must be driving this thing. Let's hear from the mechanic. This shed rattles like crazy when it moves. There's no way to roll up quietly where you need to. Plus, the engine is ancient, dragging a thick smoke screen behind it. It's definitely worn out. This is not the kind of gear that should see action, but it still starts up and moves. So, here we are. What do you think of this trophy? Make sure to share your thoughts in the comments. A few more words on the T-62. Ukrainian forces captured tanks like these during the Kherson counteroffensive. And to date, we know of 40 captured machines. Well, the 62 is a relic of the what? Sure, they're modernizing them a bit here and there, adding some new equipment, that sort of thing. Its outdated 1 or 15mm gun could definitely use more rounds, but it still gets the job done. On the upside, there's a bonus. Back in Soviet times, these T-62s were repaired in Ukraine, so at least we're familiar with this gear and face fewer issues with it. Now, this trophy is special. Most captured gear is won in battle, but the ultimate flex is getting a trophy that flies itself over from enemy territory. The operation to transfer a Russian Mi-8 helicopter to Ukraine was one of the most stunning moves by Ukraine's defense intelligence. Known as Sinitsia, this mission involved convincing a Russian helicopter pilot to cross the border. It even included safety guarantees for his family, who were secretly evacuated from Russia in advance. I contacted a Ukrainian intelligence officer, explained my situation, and was offered a deal. They guaranteed my safety, new documents, and financial compensation. The takeoff was official, straight from a military base in Kursk. The pilot followed a pre-planned route, flying low to avoid radar, and crossed the Russian-Ukrainian border. When he landed near Poltava, his crew members realized they were in Ukraine and tried to escape, but were taken out during their attempt. I decided I just wouldn't be a part of this, no matter what. Sure, I had a good job, a plane in Russia, 2 apartments, a near pension. But none of that matters to me now. My main goal was not to take part in these crimes. This operation delivered more than just a valuable trophy. It dealt a serious blow to Russian morale. Pilots are like the elite of every military. It takes years and millions to train them to handle complex aircraft like helicopters or fighter jets. Every country invests heavily in its flight crews. Though for the Russian pilot, fleeing the country seemed better than being under GUR's watch. Unfortunately, Russian intelligence managed to exact revenge on him later. In the end, trophies aren't exactly gifts. Often, they're abandoned, broken equipment, or purposefully sabotaged by the enemy. What I've seen was awful. They didn't take care of their gear, and it let them down. To turn this captured equipment against its former owners takes serious effort, sometimes so much that it's easier to give up on the idea altogether. But now and then, you get a real gem that in the right hands turns the X into just a memory. Who wouldn't want that? Just kidding. That's it for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and answer the pinned comment below.